Panasonic just sent me over their newest camera, the G9II. Today, I'm going to be taking it out on an adventure with me to capture acorn woodpeckers and see what this camera can do.
Just released this week, the Panasonic G9II is an incredible step forward for Panasonic in the wildlife photography industry. My favorite feature they implemented in this camera is a pre-burst function in which you can capture photos in the past before you ever clicked the shutter. So today, I'm working with a family of acorn woodpeckers to see if I can capture photographs of them launching off of tree trunks. I started walking over in the direction I was hearing the acorn woodpeckers calling, and as I did, there were plenty of common ravens flying around overhead and European starlings amongst the oaks. Finding acorn woodpeckers was easy, already 5 minutes in, and I had my eyes on a few. However, they were all staying high up on the trees. These acorn woodpeckers are a little less active near the ground at this time of year now that their young are a bit older, and getting them to come down for some good aesthetic shots with nice backgrounds and no leaf clutter in flight wouldn't be easy. After waiting around this morning for 30 or so minutes, I could tell that this family that lived amongst this environment with too tall of grass wasn't going to be the family that I would get good photographs of. So I set off in search of another. Along the way, I walked along the lakeside of the park in which a group of brewer's blackbirds and great-tailed grackles were hanging out. I got down ground level to see if I could test out some of the autofocus features of this camera in an easier environment. I was very surprised by how well this camera was able to track the birds with its new bird eye detection autofocus. It was snappy and sticky in a situation like this, and capable of following even when the bird would turn its back. In a video like this, you can see the great-tailed grackle moving back and forth and turning his back to the camera with the autofocus still keeping up. Sadly, the reason why these birds were mostly here, however, is not because of the lake view, but because of the trash. On the opposite side of me was some park picnic tables with trash cans overturned and trash thrown carelessly around. As humans live and expand into nature, it's always important to remember to pack out what you pack in or properly dispose of your trash. Not only is this ugly and messy, but it's also not healthy for the birds to eat foods not meant to be a part of their diet. In this video clip here, you can watch how these grackles really develop an eating system based off of the trash in this park around them, as this dominant grackle male gets defensive against the other females and juvenile males in the area. The young males square up and get into fights over the meals around the trash when they should be learning to forage out in nature.
The light's starting to get really harsh now, so I'm just gonna walk down a path a little ways up there and try to test out some other features of this camera. Tomorrow, I'm gonna come back and try to get some shots of acorn woodpeckers in good light using the pre-burst function of this camera. That's really awesome and I'm really excited about.
I walked a ways down and got to see some migrating birds through the area. A group of black-headed grosbeak, a western tanager, and an orange-crowned warbler all paid me a visit, but no good photo opportunities. I was incredibly impressed with the image stabilization, however, on this camera. And at 800mm full frame equivalent, this was the best footage I've ever seen with no elbow support. Butterflies were out everywhere today as well, and so I got some shots of them to see how this camera lens setup did with macro. A family of acorn woodpeckers was found, but this spot wasn't good for getting them down low either, so I moved on with my day.
Probably the most useful accessory I've ever gotten to use for hiking or long walks while doing wildlife photography is cotton carrier. Cotton carrier allows me to hang my camera on my chest just like this and have quick access to it, pulling it on or off. Often, things happen too quickly in wildlife photography to carry things on your back or in a bag, so having immediate access to it right here is incredibly important. Cotton carrier is also really comfortable and helps distribute the weight very effectively of your camera. And also, if you're wanting to pack light, you can pack a battery or two or some other small items in the mesh pouch on the back.
If you're interested in purchasing Cotton Carrier, they've been generous enough to provide a 15% discount code through the link in the description below. The wind was crazy the next morning as I ventured out into the oak forest to find another family of acorn woodpeckers. After finding a random watermelon in the forest, we came across a family that showed promise of making their way down low in the forest canopy. They stuck high at first and stuck to their granary tree branches. At one point, I spotted a parent and child duo as mom or dad was trying to show their kid how to forage for acorns. They hopped around from acorn to acorn, dug in the tree, attempting to split them open as child watched. Eventually, I saw they got one. But I still hadn't gotten my photograph that I wanted. A scrub jay stopped by, a Nuttall's woodpecker, and the light was getting brighter as the morning went on. Eventually, they started coming down to some areas with less tall grass cover and sticking to skinny trees and launching off from there. I switched into pre-burst mode and prepared for the right photograph. Many angles weren't ideal anymore with the lighting or too cluttered up against tree leaves behind them. Eventually, one made its way over to a clean trunk with a uniform background. I prepared my shot and it launched off the trunk, but unfortunately, it launched with its back turned to me. I needed to get a better image with it facing me upon takeoff. So I stuck around some more to see what would happen next. Time passed by for a few more minutes, but sure enough, a while later, another one came around perfectly front-lit to freeze the action. So as I prepped the pre-burst on the camera, I was waiting for the moment that it would take off. I put my eye to the viewfinder and retroactively fired off a sequence of 60 FPS raw images as the bird launched off the trunk.
I am just massively impressed with the new pre-burst function on this camera, along with their new bird detection autofocus that is a huge improvement from previous models. I'm also really impressed with their image stabilization that comes in on the camera body alone of up to 8 stops, which is just insane. And I'm excited to see how they implement these features in future full frame bodies for Panasonic, as they've already done a great job with MFT. To check out the full in-depth detailed reviews that I did on the Panasonic G9 and the 100-400mm lens, make sure to check out the video coming up in the end screen.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see the in-detail and technical review I did on the brand new Panasonic G9II, check out this video here in the end screen.